Good evening, everyone.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Sure.
Vamos a iniciar la junta.
Roll call, please.
Toma de lista.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez. Here. Councilmember Martinez. Councilmember Ortiz. Here. Councilmember Tipton.
Present. Right. We'll move to C, invocation by Pastor Inez Verdugo.
The intérprete.
Yes,
Sí.
the interpreter is
Yes.
I need
to come out.
Oh, okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Gracias. Buenas tardes. Voy a leer primera de Timoteo 2 del 1 al 2.
Hi, good evening. I'm going to read a portion from the Bible, Timothy 2, 1-2.
Exhorto ante todo a que se hagan acciones de gracia por todos los hombres, por los reyes y por todos los que están en eminencia, para que vivamos quieta y reposadamente en piedad y en honestidad.
Therefore, I exhort, first of all, that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and giving of thanks be made for all men, for kings and all who are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and reverence.
Vamos a orar.
Let's pray.
Señor, te damos gracias por este día
Lord, we give you thanks for this day.
y gracias por tu amor y tu sabiduría.
Thank you for your love and wisdom.
Te pedimos que tú bendigas a este concilio
We ask that you bless this council team
y que tú les ayudes en todos los negocios de esta tarde.
and that you help them in all the businesses that are about to establish today.
Te pedimos por el departamento de policía,
We pray for the police officers,
también por el de los bomberos
for the firefighter,
y todas las agencias que ayudan aquí a Greenfield.
and all the agencies that help the city of Greenfield.
Y gracias, Señor, te damos
And thank you, Lord, we give you
en el nombre de Jesús.
in the name of Jesus.
Amén.
Amen.
All right. Will you all please stand for the pledge? Ready?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda review?
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Public comments from the audience regarding items not on the agenda. This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the council on any items not on closed session, consent calendar, public hearings, and city council business. Under state regulations, no action can be taken on non-agenda items, including issues raised under this agenda item. Members of the public should be aware of this when addressing the council regarding items not specifically referenced on this agenda. Do we have any public comments?
There are no hands raised.
All right. And we'll move to comments from city council. Councilman Tipton.
Good evening. Yes, thank you. So I've got a couple of things that have been brought to my attention over the last couple of weeks. I'd like to start with the Harvest Festival. I attended. It was really nice. I was actually very thrilled to see the improved number of vendors. There were a couple of things I think could have done better. I've already spoken with City Manager Wood about those to provide some feedback for that. But overall, I think the event was very nice. It was very well attended. At least from what I saw, there was a pretty good crowd. Lots of vendors, lots of people talking about it, lots of music going on. So bravo, great job. Let's do it again next year. Yep. Next thing I've got is speeding on Thorpe. Thorpe has been a huge area of concern with the school there. It's also marked as a 25-mile-an-hour zone, and nobody does 25 miles an hour down through there. I know because I found myself today doing almost 30 on it coming here. But yeah, speeding on Thorpe is important. We need to see about addressing that. One of the things that was brought up is the possibility of putting speed bumps with a crosswalk. in the middle of it, especially since there is Cesar Chavez School right there. So that might be something that we can do to help slow the traffic down and improve some visibility for the students there. There are a significant number of students for that school that live in that neighborhood. So that might be something good to think of. Speed bumps in general are something that the community is very interested in. Once again, I know we've brought it up before, and I know we've got to take it in front of the Public Safety Committee. So I think we need to start doing that more and more often, looking at areas where we do know that there are lots of speeding infractions and working on doing that. People are really interested in a community center. We need to see about an update for that. I know the council's been being updated on it. I think we owe it to the community that they need to know what's going on and what the time frame is going to be for it. And I really think that that's going to be something that needs to be more visible. One of the things that was actually brought up, and I've actually already mentioned this to City Manager Wood, is I was at the Solid Waste Authority meeting last week. And one of the things that was brought up is they have a youth council as well now. And they said that they'd reached out to South County cities, Soledad, Gonzales, Greenfield, and King City, and got absolutely no traction from the schools. So one of the things I think we need to do is I think we need to start engaging with the school districts and working with them on doing a little bit better job of maybe some interaction there and encouraging the students to participate in government activities. The ones that did speak last Thursday were actually very well spoken. They were very intelligent, and they were talking about all the impact that the Solid Waste Authority had, and that none of them really realized just how much the Solid Waste Authority does, because it's not just the landfills. It's also all the recycling, all of the organics, everything else that goes in the Salinas Valley goes through their facilities. And that's something that they didn't quite understand. So we can start engaging more with the school districts on that. That would be something important. Maintenance in Tuscany Park, I think needs to be overlooked. I've had a couple of people talk to me about it, and I actually walked through it this morning and yesterday morning. And I agree, we do need some work on that. And one thing that realized is there's a front part and a back part to it. The front part looks like the maintenance has been done fairly well. The back part doesn't. So I think we need to focus a little bit on the back part of that, which actually leads to the next piece is there's a huge uptick in semi parking in that area, not just on 2nd Street, but also on Walnut itself. So I think we need to be a little bit more mindful, have our PD out there talking to the people, making sure they understand that there are spaces that they can park their semis, places that they can't. Let's see, there was something else I wanted to bring up during that. Oh, there's also travel trailers popping up in the neighborhoods. And I think we need to, again, I understand that we only allow them for 72 hours and then they have to move. And I think we need to be having our code enforcement and our PD addressing that, because I know for a fact that there's one in my neighborhood that's been there for 3 weeks in the same space. So, and I know the PD has talked to them, but they haven't moved it. Next question is, do we actually have an inventory of vacant commercial properties in the city? Mr. Mugen, I don't know if you could address that really quickly, if we actually have one or not. I know at one point we did. We had a list of all the properties vacant and used in the city, and if we could get that updated, that would be appreciated. So maybe we can go out and search for some vendors to come into those empty spaces. Because I know, Mr. Wood, is it possible that we could go to the ICSC conference again next year, like the one we went to in Vegas a couple of years ago to meet with the vendors, this time on our own and not taking extra baggage with us? The next thing that brought up, and this is going to tie about 3 or 4 things in together. I'm going to do the PSA again about don't wear dark clothing when you're crossing the streets. Because I've had that happen to me a couple of times now. And I've had a couple of people complain about it, especially there crossing Walnut right in front of the AM/PM. The farm workers are coming out and just running across the street there in the middle of traffic. Yeah, it's not pretty. But that actually leads to, there's a lack of walking space next to the EAH development, because when they put the fences up and they're doing their development, they went all the way out to the edge of the street. So they're taking down all the street signs that were there. They took down all those walking space there. So you're either walking in the street or you're walking on the other side of the road, and people aren't going to walk on the other side of the road. I've seen lots of people walking down the street there in the lanes, and it's an accident waiting to happen. So I think we need to do some visibility there and discuss with EAH what their plans are and see if we can get them to expedite backing off a little bit or putting some sidewalks in there. Next thing is I know, going back to Walnut Avenue again, I know in the Walnut Avenue specific plan, we had milestones to engage Caltrans to enlarge the Walnut Avenue bridges. I would expect with the EAH housing coming in that we've met or exceeded those markers. And I think we need to be discussing with Caltrans, because I remember talking with Brent Slama in the past that this is not going to be a simple project for Caltrans. It's going to be basically keeping the bridge in place and adding a second bridge for the other direction. And it's going to be a multi-year project to get that done. So I think we definitely need to start engaging with Caltrans sooner rather than later to see if we can get that on their list, because Walnut Avenue, we've all seen the traffic backed up on Walnut, because that's the bottleneck. That's a huge bottleneck, and we need to be addressing that sooner rather than later. I'm going to follow up. The next one is a follow-up. I know we discussed this last week and the prior weeks. SNP and the Neighborhood Pet Project. I'd like to see them put on the agenda to get some funding from us. I believe that they're doing a great job for the city in light of what they can do. I think I'd like to see them get some funding to help further that. And just as another additional PSA here, remember to spay or neuter your pets, because it is state law. If you're not actively breeding and don't have a breeder's license, you do have to have them spayed or neutered. So please make sure you're doing that. And that's why I think I want to see the SNP bus come back and to help our community spay and neuter their pets. Two more things and that's it. Do we have an update on when California Pizza is coming back? I've had lots of requests for that. And I've actually been seeing the Soledad delivery drivers down here, because they'll deliver down here for, I think it's what, a $3 or $4 fees that will come down here. So do we have an update on when that's coming back? And the last one is street sweeping ordinance. I know we talked about this in the past. Lots of people have been asking about it. Our streets are getting in bad shape again. We proposed at one point a street sweeping ordinance saying that everybody would have to not park on the streets for the street sweeping days, so the street sweepers could go down and get everything. I know that's been brought up many times. I'd actually definitely like to see us move forward with that. Say there's no parking on the city streets on the days that the street sweeping is coming. And even if we can just narrow it down to say maybe 8 a.m. to noon or something, because we know when the street sweepers come through. So if we can narrow it down to that and just give a say, like I know San Jose does it where Tuesday afternoons you can't park in certain areas because they have the street sweepers come through. I'd like to see us do something similar to get those street sweepers through and to help clean up the streets a little bit. And that's it. Hopefully I didn't take too much of it.
Good evening. Where do I start at? Oh, so I attended the witch ride, and I have to say that the gals did a really good job putting that on. And thank you to the police department and fire department for their participation. It was a lot of fun. It's over really fast. I'm hoping that maybe the organizers and the city can maybe make an agreement or something for next year to maybe extend it a little bit longer, but it was a lot of fun. I attended the Harvest Festival. Again, I've have some comments about that, but I've already given those to the city manager. I could not believe the amount of people that were there. The attendance was just crazy. It was super hot though. And, but it was a good time for everybody. I went to the housing summit in Soledad on last Thursday. And, although it was the first meeting that they've had, we did come away with a lot of questions and some answers. And I'm hoping that this is the first of many, so we can get more, figure out what we're going to do on our housing crisis that we have down here in South Monterey County. I've been noticing a lot on social media and the events that we're having locally here in Greenfield that there's a lot of community involvement now. And I think that's really great. I haven't seen that in a long time, probably at least 20, 30 years.
And to see everybody out there, whether it's music in the park or movies in the park, or just festivities from the rec center, science workshop. I mean, just everything. It's really coming together, and it's really nice to see our community enjoying all of this hard work that the city's putting together. One of the questions I did have is also on the Walnut as you're going down off to where the housing is going to be at. I don't see any lights there. And so at nighttime when people are walking, it's really super dark. And again, if you do have dark clothing on, you can't see them. I try to avoid going over there in the nighttime, but it's really important that we get moving on doing something before those houses are built. I'd like to see an update again on the parks, the signs, the banners. I think it's really important that we keep that moving and get updates at least every council meeting. Also today, where there's a big feed on social media regarding what people wanted to see in Greenfield. So it's really interesting if you get some time to go on Facebook and read some of the comments that the people are saying. It's really nothing negative, not anything mean. It's just a lot of what people would like to see for their community. And that's what we're here for, is to try to get as much done as we can. Also, I'm really happy to see that there's a lot of movement on 12th Street. It's a little inconvenient. My sister lives over there, so we have to go around. But I'd rather be inconvenienced and have the street fixed. I'm also noticing, as Councilmember Tipton said, that we're having a lot of semis parking in city. Down the street from my house, we have somebody who's actually working on semis in their driveway. And you can hear them start up and you can hear them turn off. You can hear when they're coming. Occasionally you see the whole, the truck, the cab with trailers parked on Apple and some at 12th Street. So we need to get code enforcement on that and at least warn them. I don't think they need to get ticketed right away, but at least if we can give them a warning, maybe once or twice, to not be doing that. It's not good for our streets, especially that some of them have just been paved. And tomorrow I have a TAMC meeting. One thing I did want to say from the last TAMC meeting that I had, that I went to, is that they had projected their Measure X to come in at 20 million for 2023, and actually it's 38 million right now, and it will actually get higher by the end of the year. What that means actually is that a lot of the capital projects are going to be able to get done and paid for instead of dragging them out, longer for next year. They'll actually be able to get done. So, and I have another TAMC meeting tomorrow. So that's all.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem.
Good evening, everybody. I wanted to just congratulate everybody that was part of the fire department open house. The pictures that were shared on social media, looks like everybody had a really great time out there. Harvest Fest as well. Everyone who worked really hard to make that a success, congratulations, because it really was. I think the entire community really felt like it was very well executed. And I wanted to ask about the house decorating contest that we were having. What was the deadline on that, Paul?
It's before Halloween, but
Yeah. Okay. To just remind everybody, if you still would like to join that, to submit since the deadline has not passed, and just wish everybody a safe Halloween.
very good. Thank you. All right. I have several items. Fall Fun Festival at the Gazebo Market this Saturday, the 28th. There's going to be carnival games, balloons, magic, a DJ, prizes for best costumes. So come out and have some fun at the Gazebo Market. Remind everyone again about the Halloween contest, house decorating. Deadline, I guess, is the 28th. So you might win a $100 prize, show your community spirit. Also, congratulate Chief Langborg on the open house at the fire station. Looked like it was a big hit. There was a lot of people there. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed seeing the crew rip apart a car with the jaws of life. Took them less than 10 minutes. I'm glad it wasn't my car. So, congratulate everyone, especially Fabiola Lopez, who worked on the Harvest Festival. Public Works did a great job preparing the area. It looked really good, painting the curbs, the weeding, setting up and taking down the stages and all the other items that they were involved in. So thank you very much to all of you. I walked the YMCA and Greenfield Police Department Say No to Domestic Violence in Your Community walk last Wednesday. We walked from the Memorial Hall down to El Camino to about Me Clinic. And I understand the Greenfield PD responded to 95 calls of domestic violence in 2021. Any is too many. So thank you to the YMCA and our police department, and of course, Chief Mixer, who also did the walk. Okay. Team building. I've requested a team building workshop for the council. We all want good things for the city. I know the more we work together, the more we can get accomplished. So I'd like to have that scheduled, hopefully by the end of the year, so we can get off to a good start next year. And finally, the Greenfield Post Office. I had a resident approach me about the terrible condition of the Greenfield Post Office. There was broken floor tiles, faded paint, smoked up ceiling tiles, and overall condition was just terrible. She asked me if there was anything we could do. I took some pictures, wrote a letter and forwarded it to Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren's office, asking if she could help. She responded with a letter to the Greenfield Postmaster and CC'd me on the letter. Postmaster Linda Vasquez asking if things couldn't be improved and offering up her support for the project. I'm pleased to report that the Greenfield Post Office lobby now has new paint, new flooring, and the ceiling has been repaired. If you get a chance, stop by and take a look at the difference. It was really a shock. So it looks much, much better. While you're there, thank Postmaster Linda Vasquez for the great job getting the repairs done. And finally, I sincerely want to thank Congresswoman Lofgren and her staff for the support for the Greenfield community. So anyway, thank you very much. And that's the items I have. Thank you. All right, we will now move to consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and may be approved by one action of the City Council unless a request for removal or discussion or explanation is received prior to the time council votes on the motion to adopt. Are there any public comments on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion on the consent calendar unless somebody wants to pull an item.
I'll move approval.
I have a motion to approve. I need a second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you very much. Mayor's presentations, proclamations, communications, and resolution. Presentation by Monterey Salinas Transit, update 2023, Lisa Reinheimer, Assistant General Manager. Welcome.
Thank you so much. You did a great job of
Had to hesitate just a little bit there.
You got a good one. Like you said, my name is Lisa Reinheimer. I'm the Assistant General Manager for Monterey Salinas Transit. And I've been with the organization just over 9 years. I've been before, and transportation. I hate to admit it, for over 20 years. So what I'd like to do tonight is share with you what MST is up to. I'm very glad that MST is doing that way. And go through some of our accomplishments. Talk a little bit about the partnership that we're seeing in the city of Greenfield, and talk about our big project opportunities and help. And hopefully I can operate this together. Very good. So we have a regional board or a regional agency with 13 members. Every city has a number to our board of directors and supervisors, which is established in state law in the state of and here in the field of the mayor of So I'm going to go through a little bit of our mission, vision, and values. Our mission is advocating, delivering quality public transportation that are leaders in the community and the industry. But why do we exist? We are connecting communities, creating our community, and being part of our campus. This is a new, why do we exist vision that we created years ago, really. The poetry of what we do in our community, connecting people to opportunities, to communities, and all about and the value of safety, friendliness, and ability together. So in 2023, I'm going to use the big picture and I'll zero in on specific but we had 2.2 million passengers in total. This is a 19.4% increase over 2022. COVID really did hit us pretty hard. So we've been recovering everything. 76% of the population that we serve within 3/4 mile of laptop is historically underrepresented, about 1/4% of the region. 77% are considered low income households. 25% of our
trips. Oh, why, thank you. I didn't even know. 25% of our trips are located within a state-defined disadvantaged community area, and that's based on air pollution factors, low-income factors, and other things. 20% have a disability and are dependent on others for mobility. And so where do our riders want to go? Well, primarily to work, but they're also using MST transit services to do the daily things that they need and want to do. Shopping is another big one, along with school, college. We have a college pass program, along with visiting friends, healthcare services, et cetera. You'll note that in this slide in 2023, these are actually surveys of our passengers, of our riders. In 2023, we allowed them to select more than one option. So those numbers don't add up to 100%. They add up to a lot more. Okay, why are our riders using transit? Primarily, no car is available to them. They're unable to drive, and it's a lot cheaper than driving. So what would happen if MST went away? How would people get around our community? Well, 19.6% wouldn't even make the trip. So we're obviously a lifeline for the things that people do, whether it's going to work or all those things that I already mentioned. Others would walk or bike, get driven by their family, friends, etc. So let's get into the routing that goes through Greenfield. We have two primary lines right on top of each other, line 23 and 23X. 23X is one of the lines that is more of an express. So we try to meet the commuter demands with that one. And primarily we are all along Camino Real, El Camino Real. I had it. You all were talking about Walnut Ave earlier, and that's what stuck in my head. Primarily along El Camino Real. And then there are some other services I'll get into in a second. So from January 2023 to September, on the fixed route, and what we call fixed route is essentially the line 23 and the 23X, we had just under 30,000 passengers, or 110 passengers per day. We have an on-call service here. That's basically a door-to-door type of service where you can get picked up from your house and get dropped off somewhere else, and it kind of goes throughout the city. We're trying to change that to a fixed route because we can get more efficiencies, we can get more predictability, we can get more reliability with a fixed route within the city. We've done it with King City, and we're planning on doing the same thing with Soledad and Gonzales. And then, of course, the RIDES program is our ADA paratransit program, where if you're not able to get to a regular bus and you need a little bit of extra help, a wheelchair passenger, for example, will come door to door and pick you up, drop you off. And so we had just over 3,000 passengers during this time frame in the city of Greenfield. So the top most frequented stops are the one at O'Reilly Auto Parts, the Greenfield Unified School District location there, and at Palm Avenue. Those are daily boardings. So boarding locations, these are when people get onto the bus. These are the top 5. You can see them in the bigger ones in the bigger bubbles. And then the alighting is when people get off the bus. These are where people are getting off. So if you look at the previous one, it's about the same location. They're getting on. They're also, whoops, wrong way. Okay, stop pressing buttons. Okay, so they're getting on and off pretty much at the same location, having, done their trip, maybe somewhere else, maybe within town. So those are the popular ones. Okay. So I'm going to switch here into some of the areas that we're getting into most recently is we've transitioned our entire big bus fleet from diesel to renewable biofuel, which is an important transition for greenhouse gas emissions. We are going to be recommending to our board an additional 12 zero-emission vehicles to order in winter, December, or January of this year. That's a forewarning for you, Mayor Pro Tem. We are also removing about 110,000 single occupant vehicle trips from our area roadways on the monthly basis. So if you imagine all these people on our buses taking car trips instead, what would that congestion look like? We're also reducing greenhouse gas emissions by those associated trips by 220 annual acres of forest sequestered monthly. That's when the forest captures that carbon and doesn't release it into the atmosphere. So that's a visual that people can kind of get behind a little bit more than, oh, we're saving 1,200 tons of greenhouse gas emissions. Nobody knows what that is, right? But you know what 220 acres looks like, I hope. At least a sense of it. 74% of our passengers agree that greenhouse gas reductions are important for the environment. So I talked a little bit about zero emission vehicles. This is one here that you can see, and that's what the fleet of our future is going to look like. We're going to be transitioning everything to zero emission, whether it's battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell by 2040, because that's a mandate from the CARB, from California Air Resources Board, in their Innovative Clean Transit Rule. So that's what it's going to look like. So in total, we're serving 159 square mile service area, although on Monday that's going to change because we are returning line 59 service to the Gilroy train station, Gilroy Transit Center. So people will be able to finally get back up to Santa Clara County. We have 33 lines, and we do really, really quite well when it comes to our peers in that when we ask our customers, our riders, our passengers, how they think we're doing in terms of bus operator driving, they think we're doing a great job. In terms of overall services, they do still think we're doing a great job, and bus cleanliness also ranks very high compared to our peers. So every few years, we survey our residents who don't use transit because we want to understand what their sentiment towards transit is. And we get back from them that they feel that MST services are a valuable part of our community. I hope you agree. That residents think that there should be support for improved funding for public transit in our county. They think also that greater levels of funding should be available for transit agencies, like our transit agency, over the next 5 years. And many of our residents are familiar with MST services. And if you've ever talked to our local Congressman Jimmy Panetta, he will give you a story about how he used Line 24 in Carmel Valley to get to hospitality jobs. And we were a part of that upbringing. So let me talk about the budget real quick. We have a lot of different revenue sources, mostly state and federal sources. Measure Q, I'm going to get into that a little bit, is a major need for us. And then you'll see at the bottom, fares are only 5% of our budget. So if somebody says, well, why don't you just increase fares if you have a budget problem? Well, that doesn't really work because it's just such a small amount. And it's such an important part of a transit passenger's budget that increasing fares really doesn't create that long-term funding that we need. Finally, I wanted to mention on here too, our reserves. We're using reserves to balance our budget at the moment. And we have a 2-year budget. Next year, we're also balancing it using reserves. And we don't go past the 2-year, but we suspect that it'll take reserves again, and that'll be important in a minute. In terms of where we spend the money, the majority of it is on labor and benefits. That's people like myself or 100 and some odd coach operators. These are folks that are here in this community that are part of what we contribute to the vitality of our communities. They're spending their money here. Then there's all these induced spending because we have people here. We aren't the type of organization that can necessarily work from home. We have to have people in buses to be able to drive. So that's an important thing I wanted to mention. Purchase transportation over there in orange too. That's mostly bus drivers and operators as well, because that's a contract for bus service. Okay, so Measure Q, I mentioned very briefly, this was the first countywide sales tax to pass in Monterey County. It won in November 2014, 72.6% of the vote. It's a 15-year, 1/8 of 1% retail sales tax to support our ADA rides paratransit program, our senior shuttle routes. Try saying that 10 times fast. Taxi vouchers, travel training, navigator volunteers, travel and reimbursement program. It's supporting those extra services, mobility services that the most vulnerable in our community need. And then Measure X is part of the Transportation Agency for Monterey County's program, and Councilmember Ortiz mentioned it earlier. And this was the second countywide sales tax for transportation. Big program passed in November of 2016 and 30 years, 3/8 of 1%, a whole list of projects. A lot of it goes to local streets and roads. But the reason why we bring it here is because about 7% or so is for MST for sort of regional projects, the Highway 1 Rapid Bus Corridor, which we've since renamed to the SURF, which I'll get into, Salinas Valley Transit Centers. We built our facility in King City with some of those Measure X funds. So it's really proven to be a valuable resource for us all. So our recent accomplishments are that we were recognized nationally for our COVID response. We really went above and beyond trying to help people out. One of the prouder things that we did was, instead of putting a lot of resources into trips because people didn't want to go out and about anymore, we put those resources to delivering meals to people who couldn't make it out. So we repurposed some folks to doing that, checking in on some of our elderly and, homebound passengers, just wellness checks. Hey, how you doing? And so we really stepped up. I mentioned the new South County operations and maintenance facility. We have a university and college transit pass partnership with Hartnell, MPC, and CSUMB. We recently installed contactless credit debit e-wallet fare payment and capping on our buses. I'll get into that in a minute. We have a van pool program that we subsidize, and then we just recently introduced our Better Bus Network, which I'm also going to get into. On the MST contactless fare payment, this is first in California, first in the country in a small rural urban setting where you can see on this slide, I don't know if I'm going to be able to play it. Oh yeah, look at that. So this is where you can pay with your credit card, contactless credit card on the bus. It's not something that's normal in other transit agencies. Let me see if I can do this. There we go. And he's ready to go. That's the boss man, Carl Sidoric, doing that. So he's our general manager and CEO, and got a call from the California Integrated Travel Program project in 2020, in about April of 2020. And they said, hey, do you want to test out this contactless fare payment thing on your buses? We're trying to figure out if this is actually viable. And he said, yeah, sure. Why not? Let's do it. A year later, it was on our buses, and now we can't live without it. So we've had 95,000 contactless trips made to date on this, and we're trying to implement some of the discounts available for some of our passengers as well. So it's being tested out on good old MST. Okay, the Better Bus Network, I'm nearly done. We, as a organization, looked at our network as kind of a blank slate in 2020 because there were fewer riders, and we're like, okay, well, where is this whole thing going to land? So we hired a consultant to help us really look at where should our resources, limited resources, be spent within our communities. So we decided as a goal to have 40% spread the number of vehicle revenue hours. So the buses out there spread throughout the Monterey Seaside, Monterey Peninsula area, 40% in the greater Salinas area, and then 20% of that commitment would be for regional routes like the Line 23 that supports the US 101 corridor here. And then like the Line 20 that goes from Salinas to Marina and downtown Monterey. So it was a huge success. That's why you see that 19.6% increase from 2022, because we implemented this Better Bus Network in December of 2022. And so what we're seeing is a response from our customers, our passengers, that this is working. One example for you all is it used to be that Line 23 took forever to get from King City to Salinas. Well, we've reduced that time, and we've also reduced the timed connections. So if you wanted to go from here to Marina, you may have a wait at Salinas Transit Center for half an hour. We've tightened that up, so it's only 5 minutes. So now a person can get from here to Marina, if they have family or whatever, in 25 minutes less time than it was in the old system. So it's really working well for our customers. We also lowered the fares to $2 for 2 hours. And if you have, if you're in a discount category, it's $1 for 2 hours. Okay, the future of MST. Let's see if this works. Okay, so our major projects right now, the Surf Busway and Bus Rapid Transit project. This is a new bypass road that gets out of Highway 1 traffic between Marina and Seaside Sand City area. We think we can shave off a good 15 minutes of a traveler's time in the worst of the congestion. So that'll be a benefit to our customers. We have a Salinas operations and maintenance facility need. Our current location is from 1981. It's ancient, and we've just outgrown the location. So we need to find a better place for us. We also are going to be looking at a bus rapid transit along the Alisal in Salinas, connecting up with the Line 20 It's a whole system. It's really amazing. And then our zero emission fleet I talked about, that's a over $100 million unfunded mandate for us, but we're making progress. And then battery electric and fuel cell infrastructure also is going to be important for us, because it's one thing to have the buses. It's a completely different thing to have the infrastructure to support those, right? The hydrogen fuel or the charging. So that's another lots of money. The SURF project I described a little bit. This is a map. It'll provide congestion relief, better connectivity, zero emission vehicles only along that route. And then for those who are rail aficionados, we're preserving the corridor so that in the future, if rail becomes viable, the space is available for rail to coexist next to bus rapid transit. And bus rapid transit is more frequent service, more meaningful service for our customers. So it's important for us in terms of growing our ridership and also supporting the community that's growing around us. That's a quick little rendering. And then finally, our major challenges and opportunities. Of course, you all know this too, the restoration of the local economy from COVID, employee recruitment. We have a coach operator shortage right now. Like everybody else in our industry, we are in need of more coach operators. And in fact, if you know anyone who would be a good bus driver, send them our way. We're always looking for opportunities to recruit. And I don't really have to tell you about federal government dysfunction. That's just kind of ongoing. And it does impact MSD because we do have a lot of federal funding coming to us. I just got to sit back and laugh at that one, I'm sure. Zero emission bus regulations, talked about that. Also associated with that is making sure that our workforce is up to speed and trained on those zero emission vehicles. It's a really important new technology for them to be able to, work on our buses. We also, work with with all the cities on land use decisions. We appreciate when your community services director sends us developments where we could potentially serve. We also have bus stop challenges with putting in new ones or delegating others for suspension. We also have changing demographics in our region, as well as an SB 125 challenge. I don't know what's going on there. It's flashing behind you. The one thing I would say about the SB 125 challenge is this was funding that was put into the state budget this year as a result of a big campaign by the California Transit Association to help fill a funding deficit. You noticed in an earlier slide, I had shown that we're using reserves to balance our budget. The SB 125 monies are getting funneled through the regional transportation planning agencies, TAMC, and TAMC also has their list of projects. So unfortunately, what we have been allotted in our area is not nearly enough to meet all the needs. So we're working with TAMC on trying to, balance those needs. Okay, I'm done.
Right, questions from council?
I only have a couple of questions. For starters, you talked about the possibility of going to a fixed route instead of on call here in Greenfield. We've been hearing that for quite some time, and I'm wondering if there actually is a timeline set for that yet.
Yeah, so we are also very interested in implementing the fixed route as well. We hired a consultant to help us design some of the bus stops. Some of the areas that we had identified aren't necessarily suitable for just a pole. What we have to provide is a landing pad for our vehicles to deploy a wheelchair lift, and that landing pad has to be 8 by 5. So from the sidewalk, it would go 8 feet in. Right. So that we could deploy that pad. sometimes what happens is the city sidewalk is only 5 feet. So we need an additional amount to be able to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we've been working with your public works director. My staff has been working with Jamie, and the last that was communicated was we will look at these locations, design them, and present to you a design. That's on us. We haven't done that yet. So we're making progress, but we're not quite there yet.
Okay. The only other question I had is we were talking about ordering zero emissions buses. And I know from experience that there are significant lead times for all heavy machinery, be it a fire truck, be it a bus, be it anything. And I'm wondering if you have any idea what the lead times currently are on those zero emissions buses.
Yes, 18 to 24 months. Yeah, it's long. So because we're operating only zero emission vehicles on our SURF project, that's why we're ordering them in the winter. Because we're not opening we still need to go under construction for the SURF project. So
Right.
It'll take 2 years to do that. So we're, yeah, it's a challenge for sure. And they're expensive
Yes,
and getting more expensive.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quick follow-up question. You mentioned the fixed route was in place in King City. How is that working?
It's working. I think we wanted more ridership, but still it's pretty new. The city of King City helped us with the design. So they were more involved in the actual construction and the design and what have you. So they were able to we reimbursed them, but they were able to get it done more quickly. I guess I would say it's about equivalent to the old on-call, but we would like to see more ridership.
Okay. And you mentioned the electric buses and that kind of stuff. You have the infrastructure set up for that already, and are they have it, with a diesel, you just fill it with diesel again? Is it, do they have the longevity to work for your system?
Yeah, so this is the challenge of new technologies and a mandate to get you to zero emission vehicles. We do have several charge point chargers at our 2 locations, one in Monterey and one in Salinas. We have currently 4 electric vehicles, and we have the capacity to purchase a few more, but we'll have to put in more infrastructure to be able to charge. And I think you were kind of getting at the time it takes to fill a diesel or biodiesel bus compared to charging. Yes, that is a challenge. We try to do it overnight so that we're not charging in the middle of the day when we need to have the service out there. But I will say that one vehicle, one biodiesel renewable fuel bus, 40 foot long, can go, 400 miles, whereas a zero emission vehicle, a good one, will go 120. So we'll need to have more buses to be able to do the same thing that we're doing today.
That was my next question. So. You mentioned you were doing deficit spending for the next couple of years, this year and next. How much deficit spending what do you foresee? How are you going to get out of that routine, basically? Right.
So this is part of the last piece about the SB 125 challenge. We submitted a list of projects to TAMC. One of the biggest ones is that deficit spending. We have identified $29 million and change over the next 4 or 5 years that we'll need to be able to keep our budget afloat, assuming we're spending what we need to provide the service. So over the next 2 years, it's about $5 million each year. So yeah.
Challenge is on, right?
The challenge is on. Yep.
All
and
right.
Since I'm in charge of the finance department, it's on me. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
We always do.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you
Learned
very
a lot
much.
tonight.
I very much appreciate it.
All right, we will now move to Greenville Harvest Festival review.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am here to give you a review, kind of a high level review. This is not going to be the presentation that, well, actually, we had actually hoped that it would be, that'll have to be in November. And we've changed, I think, that a little bit because we did have our debriefing this morning with Fabiola, the community engagement department, police department, fire department, public works, community development, and Victor Garcia. We covered a number of things. I mean, we tried to highlight the positives and we wanted this to be a good working arrangement. There were a number of issues that council members and public members brought up that we covered. We would like to be able to, along with the numbers, because it's a little premature as well to get these lists of, you know, the P&L, the survey of the like festivals, what the vendors pay. We want to put that together in the report for, I think, probably the November meeting. But to start off with, as far as the high points of the Harvest Festival this year, it's estimated, Victor estimated, and Victor's done the Strawberry Festival for a number of years, as well as festivals in Salinas. He estimated that there was probably 15,000 people that were at the Harvest Festival on Sunday. A lot of the positives is it's free. That's a good thing. Get you in the door. We had 4 stages, full schedules on all the stages. The entertainment was quality entertainment. We had over 120 vendors. I think last year, compare that to about 35. I think we had 35 vendors. There were free activities for the kids. Bounce houses were busy all day. Excess funding. Oh, so in talking about funding, one of the, I think the general things is, so we front loaded it because we had to pay bands, we had to pay all kinds of expenses. But on the back end, there was a supplemental, it wasn't just the city funding it, there were sponsorships that went along with it. So some businesses donated sponsorship money. They only had a 2-month kind of ramp into it because we kind of got a late start. But we did have excess funds, and some of those funds went to pay. We were planning on having 1 Music in the Park event, and we've had 3. 2 of them are funded actually by the Harvest Festival. So that's a positive. We got to engage with about 40 high school students who were getting their volunteer hours. We actually had some community volunteers as well, unexpectedly, but very thankfully. Our ECR business community, we're doing, if you guys were either there early or late, they did a booming business. At least I think I went into about 5 businesses. There were people lined up, and so the businesses behind the booths did a really good job, and they were very happy. I went in actually about breakfast time, it was about 9 o'clock, went into both Rinconcito and La Plaza. And Rinconcito was serving, I believe it was breakfast. It was early enough for it. And then La Plaza, they had a line that was almost to the door. So, you know, went around and into their counters. So lots of good activity, economic activity. And that's a lot of what this is for. We believe the sponsorship model is a success, but like I said, we only had a 2-month ramp up this year. They're planning on getting started in January, so right after the holidays, to get started for next year. So with a longer ramp, we're hoping that it's going to be less expensive because the sponsorships will pay for more, less expensive for the city. And then, of course, those are all the high, in my view, all those that were high points. We did have some issues, and of course, this is a new presenter, as it were, with Victor. Has different ways of doing things, but there was a number of issues as well that council members brought up, members of the public brought up, and we hope to be able to, in this report next month, address as many of these as we can. So we've got one of the prevailing issues was vendor prices were too high. I heard that a number of times. Traffic at Walnut and ECR, which is the main entranceway for at least the vendors. Was constantly clogged, and we had volunteers there, perhaps instead of maybe a traffic officer. Probably would have been better at sometimes, at least during the day when there was a lot of traffic. The The positioning of the booths was a question. I think it had been set up in 3 areas, like A, B, and C, and we wanted to have a lot. The idea was to have things to do at each of those places. So think places to eat at each of those in each of those sections. Had some negative feedback about that. Maybe we'd like to have them all in the same place so we know where to go to get our food. So that'll be looked at. Also, the suggestions of maybe have some seating and some shade. Yes, Sunday was a warm day, and that makes sense. So we'll be looking at that as well. Printed programs. We're trying to keep our carbon footprint as small as possible. Yet it's always good to have some printed material. More than 2-3 people that I talked to said it would be nice to just have a paper thing, and we ran out of them. We did have some, we didn't print enough. So we'll see what we can do about that next time. And then, of course, the wind and vendors leaving early, because those 2 things are correlated. We did notice that there were vendors that were there most of the day, but when the wind came up, a lot of their merchandise got tousled about, and they decided to pack it up and leave. So the people that came for the latter part of the festival maybe didn't get to see everything that people that came earlier did. We did have some logistics issues with barricades, with streets being closed, and then kind of as everyone was closing down, we had issues with trash, and people are supposed to clear out your own trash, but then after a long day, didn't have quite the compliance that we would have liked. So Public Works had to stay a little bit longer than we had hoped they would. People leaving, just moving barricades and heading out rather than following a routine path. So we've got some logistical things to take care of, and trash collection I mentioned. So really, lots of positives, lots of people there. We are looking for ways to improve. And I would just suggest, and in the future, so hopefully at the next meeting, in November, we actually get to go over vendors and prices paid, what vendors pay for in other places, what's normal for a vendor to pay for a space, a booth space, a P&L for the whole event. And like I said, next year, we're going to have, instead of 2 months for prep, we're going to have 10 months. So it's looking good. If we like the way it's going, we want to hear the positives. If we don't like the way it's going, we want to hear that too. We want to put on a good event for the public. So that's my quick overview. If we got any questions, if there are specific questions, just email me and or to Fabiola. We'll get them in the queue and hopefully have those questions addressed to the best of our ability at the November meeting. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Let's move on to J1. A resolution of City Council, City of Greenfield awarding a construction contract in the amount of $35,095 to F. LaDuca Company. Construct the Tom Rogers Museum site grading project and authorizing city manager to negotiate and execute this contract and approve a 10% construction contingency of $3,500. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor White. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez and City Council members. Without repeating your project description, this is an exciting proposal to award a construction contract, the first for the Tom Rogers Museum grading on the site. The invitation to bid on this proposal went out on September 30th for a 2-week period of time. On September 12th, we received 3 bids, and the chosen contractor was the lowest bid, came in at $36,096. That contract would cover basically site grading, compacting, and base rock. It included the contract award includes a 10% contingency of about $3,500 as well. And I would also note that should the council approve this award this evening, you would be directing the city manager to fully execute and implement the construction activities. I'll answer any questions. That essentially concludes my remarks, except to draw your attention to correct a typo basically in point 1 in the resolution. The name of the project should be a grading construction project and not an interim dewatering unit. Just a minor typo, but let's just clean that up. I should attach that to the motion automatically. Thank you very much.
All right. Any public comments? Seeing none, I'll move to council for comments or questions. I had a quick question. I noticed this is just for the grading and, site survey plan and all that. Would it be quicker to, rather than doing each individual item on this list, because there's a list on page 70, going out to bid on multiple items at once and maybe somebody doing the whole project rather than taking each individual item and going out to bid for it, taking the time to do all that?
Well, Mayor, that's a good question. And I'd rather not answer that directly. This is a guide for, first of all, that you're reading from. We'll check with the city engineer and see if he has a better approach. In this case, it's definitely it's a specific activity. So I've always seen that this is a particularly unique thing. So the grading, we prepared the site plan actually with M&S Engineering, but the grading, the compaction, and the base rock is so specialized that I'm not sure what additional tasks we would throw into that scope of work. But if we can in the future, I think we'll absolutely look at that and make sure we consolidate our activities wherever we can.
Okay. It's just, these projects seem to take forever. And if you're going out to bid on each individual thing, maybe you can speed up the process if you consolidate it.
I think this particular one, because we're actually getting the delivery sometime mid-November, we kind of had to get it done because our next meeting is mid-November. So I think we'll probably get a bigger group of things to approve next time.
Okay. For the bids, yeah.
Just a question. All right. Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion on J1.
I moved to adopt.
Move to adopt.
Sound like my mic was off. Sorry.
All second. Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you. J2, resolution of the City Council, City of Greenfield approving a supplemental appropriation for the AT&T grant funds for fiscal year 2023, 2024 in the amount of $25,000 to address technological needs for the Greenfield Community Science Workshop and Recreation Department. Staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This budget appropriation is related to a $25,000 grant given to the city by AT&T. The grant was given to us specifically to support the technological needs of our youth programs. This grant is going to support both programs of the Recreation Department as well as programs of the Science Workshop. The Recreation Department is going to be able to buy 12 laptops and other equipment to update their homework center. And the Science Workshop will be buying laptops as well as other equipment and software related to the science programming that we facilitate both at our site and also at the schools. Any questions?
Any public comments on this item? Any questions from council? All right, I'll entertain a motion on this item. All move approval. Need a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brief reports on conferences, seminars, and meetings attended by mayor and city council. A League of California Cities, Monterey Bay Division. All right. B, Transportation Agency for Monterey County.
That's me. Tomorrow morning, we have a meeting, but I give you an update.
Right.
Earlier. Yeah.
All right. Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, that's me. We did a meeting last week. We did an overview of the growth forecast for the region that has to do with population projections, housing projections, and job projections. We went over that. And we reviewed the executive director's performance. So those are the main items on the agenda. Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority.
So we met last week. The big item on the agenda was, as I mentioned before, the Youth Council. We got a presentation from them. They're looking at doing a sustainability fair in April, where they're going to bring all sorts of things together. A booth about repairing things, a booth about mending clothes, reuse, all the different ways to reuse things. They don't have a location for it yet, but they're looking at doing it possibly somewhere in the Gonzales area, simply because that's central for most of the service area. Again, that's April 6th, 2024. We'll figure out where it is, and as soon as we know that, we'll publicize that. The other thing is we've got a retreat coming up in December to try to set priorities for the authority for the next couple of years. We do know that we're coming up on a very short runway to replace Patrick, who's getting ready to retire. So that's going to be high on our agenda. So that's what we're doing with the Solid Waste Authority.
Very good. Monterey Salinas Transit.
There was a meeting on October 9th. I was ill that morning and it was too late to get my alternate to go. It was too last minute notice, but I'm glad that we had Lisa here to update us on what's been going on.
All right. Monterey County Mayors Association. We had a meeting about a week and a half ago. A lot of discussion on maybe a letter of support to Salinas Valley Memorial Hospital with their contract negotiations with Anthem, because it affects a lot of our CalPERS employees. So that was a main topic of discussion at that meeting. Salinas Valley Mayors and Managers. We've met several times over the last month.
Yeah. Most
Paul, do you want to take that
yesterday.
one? Or?
Sure. Yeah. So we met yesterday here in Greenfield. Key topics were partnering with all of the cities and the county related to early childhood education, and potentially the county putting some money in to really help all of us. It was a very good discussion. We talked about ag mitigation, that the Valley cities have all the same issues, and they aren't necessarily the same as the county and or LAFCO. So we've been meeting, and many of the meetings are talking about ag mitigation and the housing issues. Talked a little bit about the housing summit, which I think went really well last week. Is that when it was? Oh, it's crazy. And what else? Is that
the regional employee recruitment effort?
right?
Joining together and trying to get some of these people trained
That's right.
for.
Yeah. So we talked about an idea that's been talked about before about the four cities, especially, maybe even Salinas, getting together. And since we all have very much the same needs, we need utility workers, we need public works workers that really have basically, no matter where you go, it's the same skill set. There's a certificate there's a certificate program set up where you need to be certified in the utilities. And so you need to know the same things. We thought, you know what, sometimes it's hard to get people to come to Greenfield or come to Soledad, come to Gonzales if they don't already live in the Valley. So that we thought we'd take a page out of the police department's book and try to maybe get some people interested in doing internships coming right out of high school. And the internships would be really about education. For public works, if it's streets, everybody should learn a standard way to fill a pothole. And we've got plenty to practice on. It might be, but it's the same everywhere. And so that if we can get a group of these young people, Soledad can get their group, everyone get their own group, we can teach them the same things. And then we might have a pool. Maybe we only need 2, yet we had 5 people that successfully completed the internship. Soledad may have a place for them, and vice versa. Maybe we need somebody that we don't have, and they've got someone that they've trained. So when we talked about that, I think it was just a real good idea. Salinas also seemed like they were interested in potentially being part of something like that.
If we thought about getting maybe CET or Rancho Cielo involved in that as well.
Yeah, CET would be involved. We talked about Hartnell getting involved, CET being involved. We also talked about 5 cities, what we're doing with the 5 cities group. All of that gets kind of mashed together, but it's all a good place to be. Yeah.
All right. Planning Commission.
No meeting. So you'd have your meeting next, no meeting. Okay. And how about the next meeting? You're going to have one in November?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
And actually, I'd like to add the Broadband Authority real quick here. The Broadband Authority is on the list, but I'd like to add it because we met last week. And the biggest concern there is the middle mile. I don't know if you're aware of this. There's a middle mile program where basically you've got the endpoints here in town and you've got the sources. And the middle mile is what we're trying to design. We're trying to take over right now with the Broadband Authority. And apparently there's a push from the state that Supervisor Lopez brought in, that the state is trying to mandate that we leverage existing utilities as opposed to building our own. We've discussed that at some depth. And one of the things that was pointed out is that's part of the reason why we're in the debacle we're in right now, is because we're relying on other infrastructure that's not exactly as robust as it should be. Case in point is, look at what happens with Charter when something goes down in San Luis Obispo. Everybody up and down who here is out because something in San Luis Obispo fails, because we don't have that backup line. So right now the lines run down Metz Road, and if you have an issue on Metz Road, then everything goes down. And we've seen that happen here already with Verizon and AT&T when the cell phones go down here, because that line out on Metz Road gets cut. So we're actually trying to go back to the state and go, wait a minute, we want this as a backup because we need an alternate path in case this fails. And according to Chris, so far, they're open to that, but they're not as open as they need to be. So he's trying to leverage Supervisor Alejo, who is on the middle mile committee at the state level, to try to swing that.
Do you know if the line down Metz, does it come across the river, or is it, how are we going to get it across if it's not?
Well, that's just it. There are already branches across coming over here for the cell line, for the cell towers and other things. So there are already existing connections across. But the fact of the matter is the infrastructure doesn't support the speeds we need at this point.
Yeah, it needs to come down 101 would be much.
Well, and that's what. So the line that we're looking at right now is the Solid Waste Authority. The Broadband Authority has already engaged in a contract to run dark fiber down 101, starting in Castroville, I believe, coming down 101, all the way down and linking in with the fiber coming up from Paso Robles. So we're already looking at our alternate paths. We already have it lined out. We already have the contracts in place. It's just a matter of whether the state will actually let us commit to those contracts.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Drew. City Attorney report.
Good evening, Mayor White and City Council. I just wanted to remind the City Council that you do have 2 upcoming trainings. One next week on Thursday. It's the 2-hour ethics training that's required for all council members every 2 years. And then on the 14th of November at 5 p.m., which is just before the regular City Council meeting, you'll have a 1-hour parliamentary process training.
Thank you. City Manager report.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
All right. All right. Thank you, everyone. With that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.